Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about a fresh install of the IBM OpenPages GRC platform for the 7.4 release. This example video will be performing a fresh install on the Linux platform using the Oracle database. However, the steps and mechanisms for performing these installs on other platforms and other databases are very similar. The knowledge you learn from this video should be transferable to those other platforms. Where possible, I will attempt to point out differences between the platforms. So let's get started. First off, you will see there are a number of files in the directory for the installation scripts that you copied from the install media to your local machine. These files contain some shell scripts that we will be using as part of the product install. There are 4 primary steps within the product install that we will be using. The first script is the OP Database Dba Install script. The second script is the OP Database or OP Validate Dba Install script. The third script is the OP Database Product Install script. And the last script is the OP Validate Product Install script. Each of these scripts contains usage information that will explain to you what parameters are required when the script is invoked. The first thing we will need to do is to modify the SQL wrapper file that contains the parameters that are used to drive the installation process. You will open the SQL wrapper file in an editor and review the information within the file. The first section of this file contains parameters that are applicable to both fresh install and upgrade scenarios. This section is required to be filled out regardless of your install or upgrade scenario type. In this case, I am going to use the default SID of OP. My OPX DBA username will be sys. Now this parameter must be a user that has sysdba privileges. You can use any user in your environment that has sysdba. The next is the Opx Db Owner. By default, this is OpenPage, but can be customized for your environment. The table space names are also contained in here, as well as the storage directory for where the files will be created for those table spaces. Starting in the 7.4 release, these table space names are now customizable. For purposes of this video, I will continue to use the default names. The second section within the SQL wrapper contains parameters that are only applicable to a fresh install. These parameters would not be used if you are performing an upgrade. In this case, I'm going to use the default OPX OP admin name of OpenPages Administrator, provide a password. I'm going to use the US dollar as the currency. And I am going to go ahead and install Oracle Text as part of the install process. The last parameter you see here is an override for the ASMM memory management within Oracle. Our installation process now checks the install prerequisites from the documentation. However, we do understand that some environments may have differences with how they perform memory management with Oracle, and therefore this parameter is allowed to override the checks for memory management once your DBA staff has verified that appropriate memory has been allocated to the platform. The last section you see here is only applicable to upgrade scenarios and therefore will not be modified in this case. I'm going to go ahead and save this file, and I'm going to proceed to the installation process. Now, as I mentioned before, the first script in the process is the OP Database Dba Install step. This step has prerequisites, is the prerequisite step to the product installation process, and it requires 2 parameters to be passed. The first parameter is the database password for DBA user that you supply within the SQL wrapper file. The second parameter is the database password that you wish to use for your OpenPages database user. Now, if this was a DB2 platform, you would not be supplying an OpenPages password here, since you are pre-creating those users within the operating system on the DB2 platform. Once I have the parameters set, I'm going to go ahead and invoke the script. The script will connect to the database and perform all actions that require DBA privileges before we can do the product installation. Now, at the completion of this, you will see a message that talks about running the XA-related view creates and grants as part of this install. So while we're here and we're able to connect as the sys user, let's go ahead and take care of this. Okay, at this point, we have completed the prerequisite steps for the install process that require DBA privileges. You'll notice in this release, we now provide the ability to clearly separate the steps of the install process that require DBA privileges from the steps that are product install steps. This allows your environment to operate like many customer environments do, where there's a separate DBA staff. The product install team can provide to the DBA staff the subset of scripts that are necessary for the prerequisite step, and then once those are in place, provide the product team to perform the rest of the installation without requiring DBA intervention. Now, the second step within the install process is to validate the DBA install. The DBA install validation is to make sure that all of the prerequisites that were specified in the DBA step were actually performed. This step requires one parameter. This is the OpenPages database user password. This step has executed and verified that all of the prerequisites that were outlined within the DBA step were successfully met. This brings us to the third step in the process, which is to perform the product installation itself. Again, this step within the process requires only one password, and that is the password of the OpenPages database user. This is the password that you selected in the DBA step that started the install process. If you are on the DB2 platform, this was the password of the user that was created in the operating system for the OpenPages user. Now, this step will run and perform all of the product installation steps that are necessary for the OpenPages GRC database platform. At this point, the product installation step has successfully completed, and you are ready to move on to the last step of the process. The final step in the process is the validate product install script. Again, this script requires one parameter, and this is the password of the OpenPages database user you had created. The script has executed successfully and verified that your install is complete. At this point, your installation of the IBM OpenPages GRC platform for the 7.4 release is finished. Thank you, and I hope this video was helpful to you.